I need carbs. I need fat. I need protein. Okay. If you find yourself back to a place of thinking that fat is evil, carbs are the devil, and protein is king, I need carbs, I need fat, I need protein. I need all three macronutrients. Okay? Remind yourself of that. Say it out loud in that moment. Don't let yourself buy the fat free snack because you think fat is evil. You need fat. All right. Welcome to the Wellness Rundown with Monique Dene, the strategic gal, certified holistic nutritionist, a licensed physical therapist. I am your holistic wellness mentor. This is your weekly rundown of education, encouragement, and strategic tips to improve your physical, spiritual, and emotional well being. If you're ready, then I'm ready. Okay, in last week's episode, we talked about um, how we perceive thinness or thickness, skinny and fat, how we perceive body weight, and how we process that, and how we begin to shift that perspective from what the world wants us to internalize into what is actually a healthy, holistic approach. Okay, so I'm going to continue the conversation about perspective today, but I want to gear it towards shifting our approach to having a shame free, non restrictive, self compassionate approach to healthy behavior change. That was a lot. I'm going to say it again. We want to adopt a shame free, non restrictive, self compassionate approach to healthy behavior change. That is um, really embedded in the DNA of honestly who I am, but also in Moda Wellness and everything that I put out, whether it's my podcast or whether it's the work that I do one on one with clients or the other things that are to come. Um, that is the approach that I'm always, always, always going to promote. And so part of that is addressing the unhealthy perspectives that are so common in um, society and in the health and wellness industry. So, not just in products that are being sold, but also is an unhealthy approach that many health coaches have, and um, nutritionists, even, and dietitians, even like even in the fields. And I can say that because I know that I've worked with physical therapists who have those perspectives and are promoting those unhealthy, super restrictive perspectives to patients. And if y'all know me, then you know that makes my blood boil just a little bit. So I want to talk to you today about what that really popular perspective is, what it looks like, and how to overcome it in your own personal life, and hopefully give you some language to share with people that you interact with so that one person at a time, very each one teach one, like one person at a time, we can um, promote a healthier conversation about what a healthy mindset looks like regarding to diet and even to fitness, but just a healthy lifestyle. Okay. So I want you all to be very, very careful, very mindful, very cautious of orthorexic perspectives. Monique, what is orthorexic? Let me tell you. When I say an orthorexic perspective, it is that mindset that requires a super restrictive diet, even super restrictive fitness, um, robotic routines to do only what is the most healthy thing at every single moment. On paper, sometimes it can sound good to restrict. It can sound good to do only the healthiest thing, to eat only the food with the most nutrients, to eat only that specific number of protein Those things can sound good on paper and they might sell you on it because they some marketing people, okay? But um what I believe is that those orthorexic mindsets, and the reason I use that word is there are some people that believe that restriction is the way to a healthy diet. Um, they believe that restrictive practices are what is effective for people. And when I say some people, I mean not just the people that work for, not just people who are selling you a product, but also for the people who it worked for, who are now so obsessed with that process or became obsessed with it, are still obsessed with it and want you to be obsessed with it. So be careful of that narrative. It's definitely a first world problem. When I say orthorexic perspectives are a first world problem, it means that it's unnecessary and it's unhelpful. It is a product of the sheer amount of choices that you have. Right at the end of last week's episode, we talked about how people who are in lower socioeconomic areas, whether it's rural or urban, they have different types of access to transportation, different types of access to food options. They don't have as much power of choice to make decisions. They are limited by their environment, absolutely. And so when I say that this is a first world problem, I mean it's a first world problem, baby, because if you are in your community and you eat what's in your community, then you don't have this going on. But since we have so much choice, and if you are affluent enough, you have so many options of what you could eat. It becomes this becomes an available issue. So, another characteristic of that perspective is the constant researching to ensure that they're sticking to a really sh- sticking to a really strict protocol. So if I say that my diet needs to have this, I can't eat this type of thing, da, 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 like you have all these rules, then every time you pick up a food, you have to research. Every time you pick up, go to a restaurant, you have to look into what it is and calculate the macros to figure out if you can eat that thing. The constant researching is a product of that perspective. And I want to pause here and just share with you guys that because of the work that I do, because of my profession and the thing that I enjoy learning about, which is um, health, physical well being in our diet and our exercise, rehabilitating from physical injuries and ailments, because I spend my days thinking about how to improve other humans' physical health and spiritual health and even emotional health. I do research a lot about nutrition. I do read a lot about changes in the field of health and nutrition, but I am very intentional about not letting it take over my personal life and not letting it take over my diet. Um, so I need for you to be careful of the people that you get help from and information from, because unfortunately, in fields like this, a lot of times people get into that field because it's something that they struggle with themselves. Sometimes people get into psychology, right? Because they were dealing with their own stuff and they found it really interesting. Sometimes people get into physical therapy because they had an injury. Hi, it's me. That was me. Okay. Sometimes people get into, and not that that was the whole reason, but like sometimes people face that issue and then they become the provider. Sometimes people get into nutrition because they had unhealthy perspectives about food. And as they learned, they decided, I want to be a dietitian. I want to be a health coach. I want to be a nutritionist. You want to be especially careful of people who are giving you advice that is not their area of expertise. Okay. Be careful of a nutritionist, or be careful of first of all, be careful of a health coach giving you this is the only way to do this, because that's not a coach. There are always multiple ways to get to healthy. There are some underlying principles, but there's always multiple paths. We each have our own journey. That's why I always refer to your wellness journey, because it is yours and it is a path. It might be windy, there might be some hills, and your trail might not look like my trail. Okay. But be careful when someone with the expertise in one thing tries to give you advice on another thing that they have not studied as in depth. Um, so for example, I used to work with this physical therapist um, who had been told by his, I don't know if it was a nutritionist or dietitian or whoever, but he saw someone and they told him to eat like 5 or 6 meals a day, something like that. And that can be really helpful for people who have a certain like type of fitness goal or a certain type of health goal. So I'm not saying that that advice was wrong for that person. It may be really good advice for him. But then he started telling patients that that was healthiest, that they needed to have more protein and eat more meals to be healthy. And it would make my blood boil. Like it really made me hot, because here is somebody who is highly trained at physical therapy, at rehabilitation physical body through an injury, surgery, um, or whatever else that man treated. Okay. Um, that was his area of expertise. He did not go to school to be a nutritional professional. We learn nutrition basics in physical therapy. We learn how it impacts like physiology, but we are not trained to be dietitians or nutritionists. I had to do external training. I had to do additional certification in order to be qualified and recognize um, what high quality evidence looked like in that field. Okay. So be careful when someone is telling you that that's the only way to do it and that's not even their profession. But also, like I said, be extra careful when someone is a health coach and they're giving you really prescriptive advice. Um, one, that's really not their scope to do so, scope of practice, like, no. But also, um, it often comes out of believing in a really restrictive or really prescriptive type of um, mindset in order to achieve health. Okay. But I'm telling you that there is a variety of ways. I'm telling you that that there is not one path for everybody. You have to find your way to your path. You have to figure out how to navigate your trail and get to your end goal. Uh, yeah. Okay. So that orthorexic perspective also looks like eliminating food groups, deeming them as impure or completely unhealthy. That's why in last week's episode, I stressed to you all that you need all three macronutrients. You need carbs, you need protein, you need fat. Say it with me. I need carbs, I need fat, I need protein. I think I switched up the order. I need carbs, I need fat, I need protein. One more time. I need carbs, I need fat, I need protein. Okay. If you find yourself back to a place of thinking that fat is evil, carbs are the devil, and protein is king, I need carbs, I need fat, I need protein. I need all three macronutrients. Okay. Remind yourself of that. Say it out loud in that moment. Don't let yourself buy the fat free snack because you think fat is evil. You need fat. All right. That being said, people who have an orthorexic perspective or struggle with that orthorexia type of mindset, I'm not saying that they have that eating disorder. I'm saying that they have adopted that mindset or that perspective or that belief. Um, are going to feel guilty, are going to feel stressed when they are faced with that choice or the reality that they have chosen that unhealthy food. So now they have gone out and they had something that had a percentage more fat than they believe is healthy, and they can't they can't even eat that food, or they can't even like go about feeling good about themselves that day because they have one more percentage, two more percentages points of fat in their meat or whatever, right? So be careful of that trap. Um Along with that, you will find that sometimes people with those who are really, really, really restrictive in their dietary habits, really robotic in what they eat, don't allow themselves the freedom to go outside of that for special circumstances. So they may avoid certain social interactions, um, not because they don't want to hang out with people, but because they don't want to be faced with this food choice that is like um, so terrible in their minds. Um, what I will say ultimately about that good Lord. What I will say about that orthorexic perspective is that it does not allow for a gratitude based, shame free, and intuitive diet, which is what our Creator desires for us to have. You should be able to have a gratitude based, shame free, intuitive diet in order to experience the health, the overall psychological, physical, mental, I already said that, emotional, spiritual well being that God wants for you. Okay. Um, in First Corinthians 10, I love the conversation that Paul has in these letters in First Corinthians, but I really like this verse as a takeaway for you to um, go read in a translation that you prefer, read it in a translation that you understand it. um, Read the passage to understand the context, because that is a really important conversation that he's having there. But ultimately, this is a really great takeaway for the conversation we're having today. In First Corinthians 10 verse 30 to 31, I'm reading the scripture from the Amplified version. um if y'all haven't been able to tell by now, I read scriptures in, I don't know, probably 7 or 8 different translations, because they all have different, they all have value, and they all give different perspective. But I really like the way that the Amplified version explains this verse. So First Corinthians 10:30 and 31 says, "If I take my share of food with thankfulness, why am I accused because of something for which I give thanks? So then, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all to the glory of our great God." So this is just your reminder that we're supposed to partake, we're supposed to eat, we're supposed to do life with gratitude. Um, so whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all to the glory of our great God. All right. So now that we've talked about what that orthorexic perspective, what that super restrictive um, rhetoric looks like, sounds like, maybe you felt it and you said, "Oh, I felt like that before." Okay. So let's talk about how you can begin to overcome that perspective, whether you have internalized it or whether you just keep seeing and hearing it. If you believe or recognize, or maybe you're unsure whether or not you're adopting those behaviors because of underlying emotional issue, underlying psychological challenge that you're having, then I need you to seek professional help from someone who specializes in eating disorders. When I say someone, I mean a professional, um, registered dietitian, professional mental health provider who specializes in eating disorders, to help you unpack why that is so, why you're so drawn to that restriction, why you're so drawn to that, and make sure that it's coming from an underlying healthy emotional psychological health. Okay, if it's not, then work with them to address those issues first, and the healthy eating behaviors will come as a result, because sometimes there is an underlying root um, of your challenge. So even if you're working with me and I'm recognizing like it's really an emotional, it's really a mental block that you're having that keeps landing you back in a spot. If you're unable to identify that on your own, then work with someone who's willing to help you figure that out, so that you can go to the right kind of professional to get you out of that cycle, so that you can live a healthy lifestyle, so that you can like unlock the ability to live a healthy lifestyle and make healthy dietary choices. Um, some examples of underlying issues that could be causing you, leading you down the path of disordered eating and orthorexia um, aligned beliefs, is that you have underlying anxiety that hasn't been addressed, underlying low self esteem that hasn't been addressed, or even underlying perfectionism that you haven't addressed. Okay. I know we use perfectionism in our job interviews as like a weakness, and we say, well, I'm a perfectionist. So sometimes I work too hard, and that's my weakness. And I know we like to cop out with that a lot, not only in interviews, but also in our personal life. When we say, well, I'm a perfectionist. That's why I procrastinate. I'm a perfectionist. But you need to address what's underlying that perfectionism. You need to address it. Okay. Um, from one recovering perfectionist to another, you need to address it. All right. And then you also can seek health coaches, mentors, nutritionists, other supportive professionals that use components of cognitive behavioral therapy to help you identify like distorted beliefs um, about food, about body image, and about health. Okay. Um, I am a person who uses those principles in um, as a physical therapist and as a holistic nutritionist. As your holistic wellness mentor, I do use some strategies from cognitive behavioral therapy, not only on these online spaces when I'm talking to you all, but also in my one-on-one mentoring sessions with my clients. So reach out to me or find someone that you have access to that uses those principles if you feel like you're really struggling with your beliefs about food. Everyone does not talk to you about that. I find it very, very crucial to have those conversations, but yeah, just find someone who's able to help you challenge those thoughts in a healthy, shame free way. Um, Another strategy to overcoming orthorexia is to practice flexibility and give yourself um, the freedom to explore variety. Practice flexibility and give yourself the freedom to explore variety. Um, I want you to focus on balance, on variety, and on moderation. Okay. Um, and learn to apply some mindfulness techniques and some intuitive eating principles to your approach to food. Um, I also want you to take on a curiosity and really observe your body in order to learn your body. Use observation without judgment to begin to understand your hunger cues, your fullness cues, your cravings, and your preferences. When you begin to observe without judgment, you gather a lot of really good information about your body that can help you make more intuitive and more realistic changes to get you to healthy. If you're not sure what I mean by hunger cues, I'm going to link a video um, on the YouTube page. This will give you a link on my YouTube channel, YouTube page. On my YouTube channel, There will be a link to my video called Are You Really Hungry? And you will learn about what physical hunger cues look like versus what psychological hunger cues look like, and how to discriminate between those two, how to distinguish between which one you're experiencing so that you know whether or not your body needs a physical response or a psychological response. Okay, so the video is called Are You Really Hungry? Um, from my YouTube page. All right. And then the last tip I have is is to shift your focus from food to other aspects of well-being. So instead of focusing so much on the food you eat and how much and all the restrictive things around that, all the really specific guidelines that you have been operating under, shift your focus from food to other aspects of well being. So that means that you can put more focus on your fitness. You can be careful of not being too restrictive there, okay? You can shift your focus to making your relationships, making your relationships healthier, um, investing more in your hobbies so that you can experience more emotional satisfaction, doing other self care activities that are unrelated to food and fitness. Um, Shift your focus to a holistic focus rather than just the food that you eat. Yes, a healthy body is made in the kitchen and in the gym and also in your everyday life. Okay. Now that we have talked about that, something that I believe really drives that, something that I believe really drives the appeal and the commonality of those orthorexic, restrictive, militant, almost perspectives is that shame is still used as a tool for motivation. This is something else in that video I watched that really this might be the one that made me the most mad, honestly, because the statement was made that shame is a really powerful motivator. So let me give y'all some facts and unpack that lie. Okay? Shame is not a powerful motivator. So next time you hear someone say that, tell them you're wrong. Shame is not consistently effective at behavior change. It may be effective at changing some people's behavior, but it is not a healthy motivator and it is largely ineffective. It is ineffective for most people. Okay, here's why. When we are encountering shame, it can deter us from seeking healthcare. It can deter us from adopting healthy behaviors because of the stress and anxiety that it causes, because of how it decreases self esteem and self efficacy, because how it can lead to depression, because of how it can increase defensive and avoidant coping mechanisms. All of these things diminish the ability to make positive change or it increases unhealthy patterns. So you think that you're shaming someone into a better behavior pattern, but you may just be shaming them and interrupting momentarily their cycle of unhealthy behavior, but then long term worsening the cycle of their unhealthy behavior. Shame does not support people in identifying and connecting with their internal motivation. So you will always hear me say that we have to look at ourselves. Like, do you want to lose weight or gain weight? Do you want to get stronger? Do you want to eat healthier because of something externally, because of how you want to look, because you see everybody on your social media feed saying that? Do you want to do that because you feel like you're being pressured into looking a certain way? Or is that the motivation, or is there a greater internal motivator for you? Is it because you want to be healthy to stay around for your kids? Is it because you want to be strong enough to do the work that is really important and enjoyable for you? Do you want to be, do you want to have the endurance to participate in a certain hobby? Like, what is your real motivation? What's the core of that? That's something I talk to all of my clients about. Like, we're going to talk about goals and we're going to talk about why the goals are goals, to make sure that they are the most internally motivating goals to get you on a really positive and productive path of your wellness journey. So, internal motivation is actually a more powerful and more effective motivator than shame and external motivation. The goal of external motivation should be to reinforce internal motivation, not to impose. Okay, meaning that if someone is using shame to create a goal for you that is not connected to your internal values, your internal motivation, your internal desires, that is not how this works. External motivation from your professional, from your loved ones, should be to help you stay accountable to the things that matter to you. So when someone says, "Hey, I thought you said you're working on your health because you want to be around to walk your daughter down the aisle. Hey, you said you was trying to lose weight because um you want your lab values to be better. You said you were going to eat healthier because your values are pre-diabetic and you don't want to have diabetes like your mama and them." You said that's not shame. That's accountability. We have to be very careful about saying that accountability is shame, unless they're using shameful language. Accountability is very, very, very important, and that's a part of having a strong support system. Um, but you should have someone that holds you accountable. You should probably have two somebodies that hold you accountable, but you should not have two somebodies that um, speak shame into your life. Okay. Studies have shown that individuals experiencing shame are more likely to demonstrate avoidance behaviors instead of um, positive problem solving techniques. So, if you want somebody to problem solve in a way that is positive and productive, then you need to use what we'll talk about in a shame free approach. Okay. But shame does not work. So, don't accept it for yourself and don't do it to others. So, when I say a shame free approach, that means that we're leaning into self compassion and we're leading into strategies that improve self efficacy, the ability to feel like I'm capable of making change. Okay, that doesn't come from shame. I'm capable of making change because I have compassion for myself, because I have observed my behaviors. I have identified my underlying emotional and psychological barriers. I've identified the barriers that I can't change, like my finances, like my where I live, like my access to healthy food. I've identified all of the barriers. I have compassion for myself and I'm clear on what I can control. So now a shame free approach allows me to make positive behavior change and lasting behavior change. Okay, what shame does not do is help us sustain, but um, positive reinforcement and self compassion help us to make sustainable and positive behavioral change in the direction that we intrinsically want to go. All right. Um, so, like I said, it's always going to be a shame free zone over here. Feel free to reinforce it in the comment section. And feel free to reinforce it in your life. Set up the boundaries that you need to let other people know that I'm not accepting shame from you. I'm not accepting shame. I accept accountability, but not shame. Accountability good, shame bad. Got it? All right. So there's so much more that I want to talk to you all about. there's so much more that was triggered. There's so much more that came up for me. There's so much more that I have notes on that I want to talk to you all about in regards to health and weight and our perspectives about it and our approach to it. But that's really what was most pressing on my heart to share with you all in these in this episode today and in last week's episode. And I have so much more important conversations to have with you all in the following episodes. So make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can see episodes are always going to drop Monday morning at 6:30 a.m. If they drop later, I apologize in advance, but they should always be up at 6:30 a.m. on Monday morning. And then the video will premiere on YouTube on Tuesdays at noon, and that's all Eastern Standard Time. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you guys in the next video, on the next episode, whatever. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to the Wellness Rundown podcast. If you like this episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening, leave a comment or review, and share today's episode with someone you care about. Don't forget to check out the links and resources in the description below. Beloved, I pray that you may prosper in all things and be in health just as your soul prospers. See you next time.